This game is based in South America, so you're pretty much exploring jungle, villages, and cities in South America. And you're also exploring the ruins of the Mayan cities.
We wanted to start with this game building a sound identity along with Lara's sort of evolved personality. So we kind of started from scratch for this one and really thought about what is Lara's mindset and how we can bring that forward with the sound.
We knew that this was a personal journey. We knew it was also the jungle, and jungle is a lot about the sounds. And when we started, thinking about this game, it was absolutely important for me, specifically as a director. I wanted to create an emotional imprint. And the strongest way to do that is by using music and things that will resonate to the player. So when he was going to think about something and he hears that, he will remember the emotional state that is attached to that scene specifically.
Each sound designer is responsible for basically a whole map. Then we get to look at it and think, how is that going to sound, and be responsible for that and own that. So then you do everything. You do all the ambiences, every sort of interactive sound effects, cinematics even. So then it gives you a lot of creative freedom.
One of the kind of unique things I think about the Tomb Raider franchise, particularly the reboot franchise that we're working on, is that we have a big variety of gameplay types. We have like traversal, performance, combat, and puzzle-solving gameplay as well. There's a really good balance there. So from a sound point of view and a music point of view, like that gives us a really good dynamic range to work with. One of our initial pillars, if you like, for the sound and the audio vision was this idea, this one word of fear. So one of the things we really hit on quite early was using, what would traditionally be music cues and sort of bringing that into the 3D environment and bringing that into the space itself. So, a lot of Brian's music is very sort of textural, like we'll have effect stems. So what I started doing was just pulling those out of the music, and we would implement them in 3D into the actual gameplay spaces themselves. So we applied that to all kinds of different areas in the game, whether it was underwater or jungle or in the tombs themselves.
Some of the main instruments, for example, I was lucky and I acquired a 1780 cello. That's my baby, and she sounds amazing. So her and the sister, the younger one that was made for me as well, those two cellos became the sound of Lara. Like, it's basically in everything. The nice thing about these instruments is that they don't sound like normal cellos. They actually have a much darker texture because they use gut strings. So they sort of became the sonic DNA, and I got that fear texture perfectly with them. The death whistles in themselves are actually not meant to be instruments. Actually, they were used in a lot of times in war or in ceremonies, and it's a pretty scary sound. But I was able to use it in rhythmical ways, and because I have so many, I literally almost make melodies, quasi melodies with them. That works. That's actually all over the game, and especially in the tombs, they became the sound of the tombs.
The thing that is amazing is when you're exploring some of the fear, claustrophobia, for example, or vertigo, and you may think that audio has no impact on that, but oh my God, but having a sense of how high you are, like there's a moment in the game, there's a Kipu puzzle thing where you have to do a little bit of like Tarzan, you jump, attach, but you are in the emptiness, you're like in the ravine, which it's infinite down. All that sound, the cracking sound that this, maybe, on top of you, you don't see it, but it's cracking and it may give up and have you fall. That makes the feeling of fear even more powerful.
And then one scene that sort of, really stands out for me in that, which is the opening scene of the game, where Lara is stuck in like a cave crevasse. So this whole thing's happening in this very tight space.
Everything is mono. Everything is on the center channel in this scene. Nothing's playing. On a side speaker and a high speaker, the reverb is mono. Everything is in the center speaker. When you go out of the cavern, everything opens up.
At that point is when all the sound opens up into the full Dolby Atmos version of the soundtrack. So you get this sort of storytelling from a spatial point of view. When I first heard sounds that we'd placed above the player to playback, and I remember getting people into the studio to hear it. You really felt like you were there in those environments.
Miguel!
Everything has been hand placed, whether it's birds or insects or foliage or rain drips or atmospheric sounds as well. So for me, walking in there, I could just be in that environment for hours and just, that could be the game for me.
With the South American environment in particular, we really wanted to get the animals right, wanted to get the birds correct, and all the insects and things like that. We really needed that to feel authentic. So we were able to contact like sound recordists who actually been to those locations or were based in those locations, or who'd spent a lot of time in those areas recording sound. We were fortunate enough to work with Chris Watson, who had some really beautiful like oropendola, which is incredible exotic bird sounds. And also Anne Krober was a really good collaborator on this project, especially in terms of like insects and the right kind of insect layers and textures. And basically I gave her a footage of the game, of the jungle, so she could get the vibe of it, and then just let her pick recordings and add that in as a sort of, almost like a sound designer in that way. So that was really cool.
When I heard the first time the jungle in Dolby Atmos, I was, wow, that's incredible. Positioning sound objects and having it, that's in 7.1, it's flat around you. But now you're in Dolby Atmos, you have it like surrounding you. You have an effect of sphere basically. You're in the environment, audio-wise. It's wow.
With the system we have, we can build a jungle just with drag and dropping sound in like 10 minutes. If we're just talking about animals in like a single zone, we can probably have maybe 300 objects that are playing at the same time. It feels right with a different height in the speakers, with a different distance. and depending of the distance, you have the delay that kicks in, you have the reverb that kicks in as well, and all the other stuff that are underground that will only play on the normal speaker 7.1, and everything will have the depth.
All these environments are very vertical environments. Like there's a lot of height information that's there in the jungle. You know, all the birds and all that sits in the canopy above the player. With the cenotes, underwater exploration, you know, we if there are enemies that are tracking you just above the water surface, you know, you'll hear those like filtered but above where you are. So again, that you can use that height information to take down your prey in a way. It's actually very valuable for gameplay to have that extra information. It definitely influences the way that, you know, we build the levels and we build out the environments, for sure, especially from a sound point of view.
Translation is really great because we mix in a well-calibrated studio, so that helps. We mix in Atmos, and as soon as we tried to play our mix in a TV, it was really, really great. We have different options for the dynamic range, the low dynamic range for the low TV speaker. We have the middle for the headphones, and you have the high theater one for Atmos and 7.1 setup and 5.1 setup. Even the Atmos for headphone as well is supported, and everything's still mixed together. You're still hearing the voice correctly. The dynamic range is pretty high, even a headphone, so which is really cool.
When we build a world, because in video game that's what you do, you build a world. You don't just build a story, you're building a world. And the more you respect how the world works in terms of logic, physical logic, that's where people get completely immersed and lost in that world. And they believe that they have been transported into that world. So having audio, having the birds, the howling monkeys in the jungle, hearing all the leaves shuffling around and cracking in behind and one at the top because of the howling monkeys on top, and there's something moving below, it creates a sense that you are there. And that's what this really brings to the media, where you're feeling that you are this character, that you are Lara Croft. And the audio is key to that. That's what the audio does in this case.